Next up, can I welcome from Gables, Chris Brown.
Welcome, sir.
Good to see you and I.
Good to see you. So, a perennial visitor, Gables has been on stage probably more times than most in the last few years. So a lot of the clients will know some of the story, but just to benefit everyone, give us a quick run-through of Gables, the culture, and a little bit about the company, if you would.
Okay, well, Gables is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. We are, like many of the property management companies, very decentralized. We focus on managing, building, developing multifamily and mixed-use residential apartment communities. So we provide a place for people to stay. Our mission is taking care of the way people live, and with that, the focus is just providing an unparalleled living experience for our customers.
Great. So you've been working with PeopleAnswers now, I think, since 2009?
Right. The summer of 2009, we started some discussions, and we launched our pilot in November.
And John was the behavioral scientist involved with you. So give us a run through of what you've achieved and what your journey's been like on that since 2009.
So, like many of you, and like Riverstone mentioned earlier, the decentralized hiring, it's very difficult when you have 150 or 200 hiring managers to do anything other than maybe the methods that they had in the top 10. We were very frustrated with our high turnover in key positions on site, and so we engaged PeopleAnswers to help us improve the hiring practices and really knuckle down and reduce the turnover as well.
So once you kicked this off, how did you kind of determine the positions and the locations that you're going to start with? Because I understand you didn't go with a full rollout initially. So how did you actually determine where to start and how to start?
Right. So it turned out to be a perfect scenario for us. We have wholly owned assets that we own, we develop, we build, we manage, and then we have the third-party business, and so we manage those for a fee. If you can imagine, when you all look for budget funds, if it's your company, it's pretty, if you can justify the project, it's pretty easy to get the money. But when we're trying to sell to somebody else, the third-party owners, they're a little trickier. They want to have a little bit more data behind the decision. So we opted for what I call a 50-50 rollout. We rolled out to our wholly owned assets on assessed positions for using the best practice profiles. And then we went to our third-party owners and kind of let them continue doing things the old way, the pen and paper, and really sifting through the hundreds of resumes that people had. So when you think about it, what a perfect setup for an analysis at the end of it.
So you started to use focus groups, I believe, as part of that exercise, and that's something I think we've adopted since then with a lot of our other businesses. So talk to me a little bit about the use of focus groups and the value that had. Right.
Well, one of our core culture beliefs, and especially in the HR team, is to get feedback from our end user community to make sure that what we're asking them to do makes sense, that their day-to-day operations are not adversely affected, but that the experience improves. So as we were wrapping up the pilot, John and our client account manager, Brian, came to our Dallas office where we brought several of the managers in from around the country to talk about the incredible parts of the pilot, the maybe not so good, and areas where we could improve. So that was a real key piece when we decided to continue on.
So we went through that exercise, we had some best practice, we had a limited rollout, obviously, and then we wanted to look at what results we had. So let's take a look at some of the documented results and just talk through some of those for us, please.
Okay, so, well, in our results, you guys can see this, fantastic numbers. 38% reduction in overall turnover, right near 50% in reduction in involuntary turnover, and 633% annual return on investment. It's not hard to see people really get addicted to this assessment now that we've rolled out.
And we were talking yesterday in one of the other forums about the typical HR organization being seen as a cost center, this kind of initiative must give you the ability to go out and say, hey, we're delivering real value back to the business, right?
Exactly. It was really fun when we rolled out, especially during the pilot, because we saw these managers who, now I'll back up a little bit. We did institute a cut score. A lot of you have not. You allow people to interview and continue to hire people who don't score super well on the assessment. That's a great way to analyze the numbers. We did. If somebody scored below a 70%, we didn't pass them through to the hiring managers. So when you think about this, massive hiring culture change, because the managers went from receiving about 100 resumes per position to maybe 10 very high quality resumes. So we were seeing them and hearing the managers on our wholly owned assets talking about how much less time they were taking in the interview process, how it was difficult to pick from the really high quality candidates, but most importantly, how much more time they were recuperating to get back into the customer service mentality.
And how did you, once you establish a value, how do you communicate this back to the executives again? What's the mechanism for making sure you keep them appraised of what's happening and keep them current on the value?
You know, we've continued to do post-deployment studies. I think we've had 2 now.
Right.
Brian and the PeopleAnswers team come meet with our senior management group. They provide the results, and obviously as they continue to show numbers like this, the information is extremely well received. But kind of the fun part for us in the vein of continuing to get feedback and educate and create engagement, even though we've been on the system for 4 years, we launched a national recruiting workshop in 2012. It was kind of like we called it the Rockstar World Tour. Brian came and presented with us, shared the post-deployment analysis.
Our Brian?
Your Brian.
Oh, sorry.
He was just like a TV.
He was gone for like 2 months too. That was a straight. You kind of hijacked him there for a while.
We did hijack him. He toured from San Diego to DC to South Florida with us. And really shared all the information with our hiring managers. And when they could see that, especially the people that were hired who had taken the assessment, but maybe hadn't received the most up-to-date training on it, they really re-engaged. And this is something that had such great success. We plan to continue to do it.
So you faced the challenge then of, okay, how do we wean ourselves from best practice and how do we start to get off of that? So talk with John about how that process evolved and how you decided to move off best practice, because this is something we often get asked by a lot of other customers.
Right. So after the initial pilot, John's team really broke down our job descriptions and was able to identify a handful of the key positions that turn a lot. The leasing professional in our world is the salesperson. That's it's easy for them to leave for another buck on a commission or something like that. So we identified the ones that were probably the highest risk and the highest return when we wanted to customize. Mm-hmm. Let you talk about that process.
Yeah, so we started off with a few profiles at 50% of their communities, and then once we realized and they realized how well this was working, we decided we need to roll this out to all of our communities, 100%, and we also want to create custom performance profiles for all these positions. So we have a lot of best practice profiles in this industry. We have a lot of property management clients. That's not a secret. So the way we build best practice profiles is that we use industry data and we aggregate that together to build these profiles that are used when they're necessary. And the great thing that Chris and that Gables did was that they didn't get stuck in the rut of relying on a best practice profile when they had the opportunity to build a custom profile. And there are many clients that I've seen over the years that sometimes don't get over that speed bump. They start to use best practice profiles, which are on the spectrum of science, fiction to science fact, are good, but they're not as good as custom profiles. So when you can build a custom profile, do not over-rely on best practices. And they certainly haven't, and you've since seen the results in their turnover studies. So
what were the big aha moments when you actually compared the new profiles with the best practice? Because I know we had the session 2 years ago where we compared different people in your industry. So what were the big aha moments for you on that?
Right, and that was, I think, my first conference, and it really was the aha moment. We had, I believe, 3 property management companies up on the stage, and they compared the leasing professional profiles. They were all custom at that point, and they compared the 3 profiles. Now, it's the exact same job across the industry, but the attributes for success in each company was very, very different. We had one company had a leasing professional that was a cheerleader. We had one who was an achiever, and one who was a deal maker. And you can see the difference between, just on the high level, you have a deal maker and a cheerleader and an achiever, very different attributes that are going to drive success for those roles. So it's kind of an amazing aha moment for me right then.
So as you continue the journey, what would advice be to other people who are in a similar position now?
I can tell you we have moved, after the initial pilot, we now have 5 custom profiles. 9 custom profiles, and we have moved forward with best practice profiles for all of our other positions, including the corporate office roles, where we simply don't have the incumbent data to customize those roles. But if you're going to use the best practice profile, and you do have a position with high turnover or high incumbent data, don't be afraid to take that next step and move on to the custom, because the difference is fascinating and amazing how much more accurate the profile will be.
Excellent. So really appreciate you coming up and sharing the journey with us. It's been really insightful. And a round of applause for our guest, Chris. Thank you. Good job. Thanks a lot.